Hey guys, me Sam Stein, managing editor at the Bulwark, here with our fearless publisher Sarah Longwell. We are going to talk TikTok because a lot of shit is happening with TikTok in the past 48 hours. As we are speaking now, it's 2 p.m. on Sunday. The app is going back online. It's kind of creeping back online because Donald Trump has said that when he assumes office tomorrow at noon, he will grant it some sort of waiver via executive order and give it a 90-day grace period by which it can have more avenues for divestiture or, I don't know, figure something out. It's really a remarkable thing because, first of all, and I just need to step back here. I don't think I've ever seen an issue where the flip-flopping and the hypocrisy is as blatant as this. This all was facilitated because of Trump 4 or 5 years ago trying to ban the app, calling it a threat because of its Chinese ownership. Now he is trying to save the app and being hailed as its savior because he believes that its supposed 170 million users will, worship him for doing this. Before I get into the history of this whole thing, Sarah, what are your thoughts on what's happening here?
First question, has anybody done a wellness check on Tim? Because I know this is his favorite toy, the TikTok.
Yes.
He is a slave to the algorithm of TikTok. The Chinese fully own him, as best I can tell.
Well, I will say this. I don't use the app. I don't use the app, but I've watched things on the app. I have friends who are users of the app, and they're like, it is the world's greatest algorithm. It is highly addictive. They are so good at what they do. It's just fantastic. So I got to tip my hat to the Chinese. They've created a very good product. I don't think it's the safest product, but that's another question. And I don't know where Tim is, to answer your question.
I just think it's funny. I don't know where he feels like the natural choice to do a TikTok video, but
we can do a follow-up with Tim. How about that?
He might be curled up in a ball with the shakes because
it's been hours since he's been able to post. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, that's right. So I got to say, I got up this morning and my news feeds were wall to wall with one image, which was what TikTok posted as the ban went into effect midnight Beijing time. And so when they posted, and I don't know if we can get this up on screen, but I can give you, I've seen it now so many times, because of the US government, TikTok has had to discontinue service. However, because Donald Trump seems interested in making a deal, we're hopeful that we can work something out, basically. But it names Trump. And so this has two functions. One is to both show Trump, hey, bud, it's a pressure campaign, but also sort of a charm offensive, an incentive, a way of saying, hey, Trump, if you do this, you can be the hero, but also we're putting it on you. We're making sure everybody knows you're the one who can do this. And frankly, this is where Donald Trump is such an easy mark for places like China, because, of course, he sees the incentive structure clearly immediately. Right. And so when you say the flip-flop actually happened because of a previous incentive. Again, two things. One was there are Americans who are very rich because they have stake in TikTok. And so they went to him specifically, Trump donors, and said, hey, man, you've been down on TikTok, turn that frown upside down and let's talk about how this can be good for you. He immediately reverses his stance. And also the other reason is that they were doing really well on TikTok, right? Exactly. Trump's campaign was doing really well on TikTok. And one of the reasons he overperformed with young people is because throughout the entire Biden piece of things, they were dominating on the platform. And so TikTok has now earned Trump's support, his adoration, and he is going to be their savior. And in fact, they're turning it back on because Trump, still not the president, still not sworn
in. Well, I
in.
want to get to that. What is the legal basis for this to happen? This doesn't make any sense to me. He's not the president now. He has no issue. He can't, give it another 22 hours, but he can't issue an executive order. I don't really understand how, under the law, TikTok can be turned back on right now. Everyone's just sort of glossing over this, but he's not the president. But just to talk with you about you,
He's making assurances, Sam. He's providing assurances.
yeah, but the fucking law is the law, right? Like, or it should
No.
be at least. So
Yeah.
you were mentioning the reason he flip flopped, and you were alluding to Jeff Yass, who big time conservative
Yes.
donor. He is invested in ByteDance. Which is the parent company of TikTok. He reportedly had a meeting with Trump, after which Trump did come out and say, this stuff that I had said about TikTok, I'm actually, rethinking. And I just want to emphasize how much of a 180 this is. Okay. This whole thing started back in the Trump administration when real concerns were issued about the Chinese ownership of TikTok. It was labeled a national security threat. Trump issued executive orders to try and force the app down. And in fact, the app was banned under Trump. I just want to be very clear. The app was banned under Trump, not for everybody, but the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Army, TSA, all government entities, they banned having the mobile app on their worker phones under Trump. Okay, that's just fact. You can go look it up. We'll put up the articles. Not only that, the people who Trump has now empowered to run his administration in key posts were very vocal about their support for a ban. Marco Rubio, incoming Secretary of State, said that communist China was on the clock once TikTok law took effect. He was at the forefront of warning against this stuff. Brendan Carr, who Trump has tapped to lead the FCC, he authored a letter to the CEOs of Apple and Google describing ByteDance as, quote, beholden to the Chinese government. These people have now gone completely quiet. They're going to follow what Trump says. Trump, of course, warned that TikTok was a threat. You have conservative influencers like Charlie Kirk, who was cheering on Trump, being like, yeah, fucking get him. Fuck the Chinese. That was 5 years ago. Now he's cheering on Trump, saying, yes, Gen Z, don't you love that Trump is your savior, saving this app? And I'm not saying Democrats are innocent. I mean, Ed Markey, senator who voted for the ban, was on the floor a couple days ago introducing legislation to delay the ban app, the banning of the app. Chuck Schumer, same thing. But the 180 is profound for Trump and the people around him. And I think it's just, like you said, it's both cynical politics because they think they could win over the youth vote. And I think it's donors who got to Trump, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a whole bunch of things going on here, but here's one of them. Is China our enemy or isn't China our enemy? Because I think one of the things is that Trump very much made his, in the way that he cozied up to Russia, he and his followers ensured people that China was a big problem. When COVID happened, right, it was the Kung flu. We are against the Chinese. But because he's weirdly admiring of dictators like Xi, right,
Yeah.
for people who rule with an iron fist and, put people in concentration camps and look to annex their democratic, territory. That is, or
You think he
places
admires that?
He admires that, right? And so what happens
Kind of wishes he could act like that a little bit.
yeah, but this is the inherent tension for me of so much of MAGA, right? It's like, is China dangerous or do we have to have their app on all our phones? Are we going to lower taxes but spend more on border security and also cut trillions of dollars from the budget?
Right.
Which is it? Are we anti-immigrant or are we pro-immigrant? And these things, every single time they come up, they end up putting a tension between
Right.
certain types of MAGA and other types of MAGA. And I think what Trump does, this is where he really pulls the rug. Well, so part of it is this: if you're steeped in MAGA world like Charlie Kirk, you are just used to taking top-down instructions, and you don't
Right.
fret over the previous tweets in which you
this
said
is nothing
ban
for them,
TikTok.
right? Being called
No.
out for hypocrisy is the small price to pay, basically.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they don't care. It's all on their side. I also just this TikTok thing came on the heels of, I know you guys did a Bitcoin video, but Trump overnight.
Oh, the meme coin, yeah.
The meme
That's
coin is now
unbelievable.
worth 86% of his net worth. So like
It's crazy.
it's the things that are happening right now. Like somebody on Twitter was like, "You've posted 7 times this morning because of Trump. Go touch grass." And I'm like, that is because why aren't people more why isn't everybody freaking out? The guy has managed to enrich himself overnight by monetizing the presidency to sell a meme Bitcoin and enhanced his wealth. And then he's basically making a deal to split, like, because this is where it's landed now. We are going to be in joint owners of TikTok with the Chinese.
So I didn't understand that because he put out this statement where he talked about a solution here. And the solution he suggested was, quote, let the United States have a 50% ownership position in a joint venture. I mean, the literal reading of that is our government would own the app. Is that how you read it? Because that's like
state-owned
textbook
media company.
Yeah, it's textbook socialism, right? Like,
textbook socialism.
Yeah. And you're doing it while you're trying to defund NPR and all that stuff because you don't want to fund the media. But this is like a little bit wild. I don't know if I'm going to admit, it could mean that he wants a U.S. company, but he didn't say U.S. company. He just said U.S. ownership.
Well, Sam, this is a fool's errand. What, we're going to sit here and interpret something he tapped out? Like he's tapping out policy with one of our biggest geostrategic foes, and he's just making policy up on the fly to satisfy the whims of 20-somethings who are mad that their toy got taken away because it's Chinese spyware. Now, listen, I'm not saying this is politically easy, but I will say the way that democracy works is that there was bipartisan legislation, there was a vote, when overwhelming bipartisan vote decided to ban this, and then the President of the United States signed the bill. Nothing is more democratic. It worked completely by process. Everyone agreed.
Add to that, there was legal challenges to the law. It went through the Court of Appeals. It went up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court upheld the law. The challenge was, is this a violation of the First Amendment? Because you're outlawing an app, and the Supreme Court basically said, no, you can make national security determinations on a 9-0 ruling. And I just want to be clear about, because this is where I was like a little bit, I think this is in addition to how crazy the meme coin shit is and all this, interpreting law via bleep or whatever the fuck we call, sorry, I say fuck too much, whatever we want to call his postings.
Yeah, we bleep, him he bleats.
Bleats, thank you. All right. This is I went and looked up the language of the law because the law does allow for an extension. It allows for a one-time extension of not more than 90 days with respect to the date on which this, I'm reading from law, on which this is subsection would otherwise apply to such application pursuant to this paragraph. It allows the president to grant the one-time extension. He's not the president, so again, they shouldn't be operating right now, but whatever. Let's put that aside. Second, 1, a path to executing a qualified divestiture has been identified with respect to such application, and B, evidence of, quote, significant progress toward executing such qualified divestiture. There is absolutely no evidence that that's happened. Just zero. In fact, ByteDance has resisted divestiture completely in selling the app. And the question is, do these laws matter? Like, that's, I guess, where we're coming from. And the other question is, what happens if Trump just proceeds with this and this continues to, the 90-day extension is granted? I mean, surely there has to be some sort of legal challenge here, unless these laws simply do not matter. And that, to me, is where this actually goes into some sort of it's a very serious thing, but that's where it gets, like, extremely serious. It's a very early indication or test about whether the letter of the law actually matters.
Yeah, and I guess we'll see, but for people, but it's not going to matter to Trump and his people. I think the question is
right.
Will there be courts that backstop things by saying, hey, Congress, if you don't like what you did here, go back and change the law, revote, but you voted on this, and so now it's the law.
And the other thing is, who's going to bring the suit, right? Like, everyone in Congress seems to be, like, rushing for cover except for Tom Cotton. Do we imagine Tom Cotton's going to actually say, no, I'm going to sue to enforce the law against Donald Trump? I don't know.
Well, this is where I'm interested to see how Rubio responds, because the thing is that there is widespread agreement of, there's no one's like, no, this isn't Chinese spyware. They're like, it is Chinese spyware. It is the Chinese using this platform to manipulate U.S. audiences. And more importantly, and this is where you saw Elon jump in, which is, and this is to me actually another interesting tension that gets picked up here is Zuckerberg, Trump's new best friend, does not, well, he wants TikTok banned because he's got Reels, right? He's got a US competitor. And so he'd like to get this thing out of there. And Elon wants to be able to operate X in China, right? So part of the issue is that China has a one-way relationship with information and the United States. So they want Americans to consume their information, but they will not allow American social media platforms to operate freely in China. And so the Elon sort of is drawing a line there. So I do think part of what's happening is you're going to see how the MAGA verse comes together to all try to get what they want, which is for Trump something politically advantageous that increases his power, and for these other guys it's some kind of monetary reward. What happens when everybody's priorities start to get in real tension? Because quickly here, there's going to be winners and losers in Trump's world. And he can't please everybody because he's set up, as I was pointing out before, there's set up too many inherent tensions in the things he's promised everybody.
Right. And it's funny you mentioned Musk because the original reason that Trump endorsed a ban of TikTok back in his presidency, or I guess maybe, sorry, it might have been during his post-presidency, but when he was running before he flipped, either way, he explicitly said the reason part of it was because he felt like he didn't want Zuckerberg to have sort of too much of the market share on this stuff because he thought Zuckerberg was, in his words, an enemy of the people or whatever he said. And so now, of course, Zuckerberg has sucked up to Trump, is no longer an enemy of the people. Trump still wants the TikTok ban. And Musk, meanwhile, wants Twitter to be available to the Chinese. And here we are. And then on top of that, even as the ban started to go into effect, a secondary app basically popped up, Red Note, and all the TikTok users were flocking there. And it brings us back to the sort of fundamental question, which is the ban actually smart policy, not politics, smart policy in the first place? And, obviously everyone's shifting on this. Almost everyone's shifting on this. The other thing that was shared a lot this morning, in addition to that TikTok statement, was a video from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And this was about the TikTok ban. It's a 4-minute video. I encourage people to watch the totality of it. In essence, what she said was she voted against the ban, both because she thought that the national security risks that they presented were not as compelling as they thought they were, but because she said, I don't want to play whack-a-mole. Like, I don't want one app to come up, we whack it, and then everyone flocks to another one, we have to whack that. She's like, what we really need is like legislation that is, that lays out our privacy rights, that says, what kind of information we can have protected from these apps so that it doesn't matter whose app we're using, we feel a sense of protection and proprietariness around our data. And, I feel like that's actually probably the smarter way to do it, but that just won't happen.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. I mean, part of it is, so I'm not a user of TikTok, and I guess, but I do tend to be pretty close to a free speech absolutist.
Right.
And so I don't love the idea of us, just having to ban things that people are using, that they create content on, to control flows of information. However, when something is a national security threat, it is spyware, like these are just new problems. They're new things we're going to have to grapple with. And it's not like the old days. And so us figuring out a broader way to handle it is like the grown-up thing to do, but Trump is going to use it as an opportunity. And I know you wanted to say the policy part, but like, I can't ignore the political part, which is this is all upside for Trump. Because his side's not going to hold him accountable. Democrats are getting pretty weak-kneed on the idea. Like, they were all going to have to walk the plank together to do this politically. And because they're not now, and Donald Trump's going to benefit from it, Donald Trump's going to get to be the hero, and it's going to look like he was right to do it because everybody else is jumping ship and saying like, it's not on me, not on me.
It couldn't agree more. It's unbelievable. And people don't actually know, this is the history of this. The executive orders issued under Trump to ban TikTok, which never went into effect because of legal issues and challenges. So Biden actually revoked those early in his tenure because he wanted Congress to study the issue and so on and so forth. And then, of course, 2024, legislation gets introduced in the House, gets picked up in the Senate, gets signed into law. Biden signs it. He sort of feels like he's got to be tough on China and look that way. And then I don't think people know this either, but the Senate Democrats last week introduced a bill to delay implementation of the current ban. And it was blocked from consideration on unanimous consent by Tom Cotton and Pete Ricketts. And so, it's not, ultimately, there were some steps taken by Democrats, but they're going to come out looking like the people who banned this and that Trump is the person who saved it. And even as we're speaking, TikTok is back online. The CEO of the company is thanking Trump and praising him for giving them the assurances to go back online. Tom Cotton's out there tweeting saying, hey, don't go back online. There's going to be penalties and severe financial penalties to pay if you do this. But he's not addressing Trump. He's not saying, hey, Donald Trump, don't do this. That's wrong of you. Don't be a fool. Don't be China's little bitch. He's not saying that because there's no way that Republicans in this day and age will ever call out Trump for completely flip-flopping and being in China's back pocket. That's just not what they're going to do.
I think that when we think about Trump testing our institutions, institutions are really just people. And I think, he's already got such complete capture. And this is one way in which it is a little different from the first time, right? He did not have complete institutional capture of the Republican Party from the jump the first time around. He does now. And even Tom Cotton, to your point, so people who are like, as a policy matter, Donald Trump is wrong. I'm going to push back on this. They're going to do it in a way that sort of is just circumspect and doesn't, actually criticize Trump, doesn't make him pay any political penalty, just tries to say where they stand on these things. But going forward, it's going to be all this, right? It's going to be Trump forcing people to be like, okay, enforce the law, make me.
Yeah.
Because, and you know what? Our institutions aren't prepared for this.
Well, that's as much TikTok as I have in me. If you wanted more, let's call Tim in. I don't have anything else to say. Sarah, thank you for doing this. Really appreciate it. Guys, I should have mentioned up top, do subscribe to the feed. We appreciate that. Tune in, as always, to Bulwark YouTube page and our regular Substack. We have great stuff all the time on both platforms. Sarah, thanks a bunch. Take care.
Bye.